from the Ticats Audio Network. This is the CFL This Week with Bubba O'Neil.
If Labor Day is the unofficial second half of the CFL's regular season, well, the first half of the 2022 campaign closed with a bang. Welcome back. This is the CFL This Week on the Ticats Audio Network. I'm Bubba O'Neil. Our guest for this week's podcast, simply outstanding. At one time, she was the face of Stamps TV. Now she's the big boss creating content for the Woodbine Network. She's one of our rookies, Alanna Nolan. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Hey, from McMaster quarterback to one of the lead voices of the old TSN Hamilton Network. Presently, he's one of the fine play-by-play men for the CFL on TSN. Marshall Ferguson, great to have you.
That's my name. Thanks for having me, Bubba.
Right on. Hey, and all you got to say about this cat is post-media columnist, CFL Hall of Famer. Steve Simmons, honored to have you on board.
Nice to be here, and nice to be here with this kind of company.
Right on. Hey, fans, before you head out to the Labor Day game, help the Purelator Tackle Hunger Initiative. Please bring a non-perishable food item to the game to support Hamilton Food Share and help us tackle hunger in Hamilton. Right down to business, folks. The Tiger Cats lose to the Argonauts. Big time, 37-20. Argos outscore the Ticats 27-4 in the second half. Steve, I'll start with you on this one here. Are the Boatmen the sleeper team in the CFL this season?
I think they're the only team in the East that has an offense and a defense. And I think that says something about how bad the East is. I won't call them the sleeper team because I think Winnipeg and BC and Calgary are at a little different level than the Argos are at. But the Argos have a relatively decent defense. At times, they have a relatively decent offense in that half of each game that McLeod Bethel Thompson chooses to play. And that's something that Hamilton and Ottawa and Montreal don't have. So I won't call them the sleeper team. I'll just say in a really, really bad, maybe the worst East Division I've seen in a very long time. They're the best of a lot of bad teams.
You on board with that, Marshall?
Yeah, I mean, not far off. I think, in terms of the poor quality of the East Division so far throughout the year, I think these things usually you start with a West heavy schedule and then they kind of balance out as you go down the stretch. But it's been like incredible this year to see how many close games specifically at the start of the year were lost by East teams against the West in head-to-head matchups. So you are judged by your wins and your losses, not by how close you were or if you held the lead at one point or so. The East is what it is at this point. And I mean, coming out of this weekend, seeing Ottawa get the win in Edmonton, I was kind of looking at the standings and going, Hamilton's one win ahead of Ottawa and they had to beat them in the final minute of a home game. Like, considering all the things we've said about Ottawa this year and Paul Applee's job on the line and what are they doing to rebuild and all that, I'm like, Hamilton's one win better at this point. And I think that really does paint the fact that down the stretch, there's going to be a lot of battles at the top, I think, of the West. Like, you're going to see Calgary and Saskatchewan go at it pretty hard to try and figure out who can try and topple BC, Winnipeg. But then I look at the bottom of the East to try and avoid the crossover. And yeah, I do look at Ottawa and Hamilton, but to your point of the question, like, Toronto for me has been this conundrum all year because, Steve says, and rightfully so, only team with an offense and a defense. Whether or not they show up consistently is the question. And even when they don't, it's kind of funny with the Argos this year because even special teams takes turns making up for the rest. Like, they went a 4-week stretch where they had 3 defensive or special team touchdowns. And so you're looking at the offense and thinking, well, they're just not good enough. And yet they just keep finding ways to win football games, whether it's Enoch Penny-Larea having a fumble recovery touchdown in Saskatchewan, or if it's Chris Edwards having the pick 6 off the Ticats to close out that game in week 9, or it was just, they keep finding ways to kind of throw some makeup over the top of whatever's kind of not working, the blemishes in their roster. And I don't know if that's going to be able to continue, but if they continue taking turns and making up for each other, there's a chance that they can continue to sneak some wins, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Alanna, it's kind of amazing to me. I think McLeod Bethel Thompson, the leader of the quarterback position for that team, and there was talk about Chad Kelly maybe even getting increased playing time. It's an offense that I think has scored 1 touchdown in the first quarter, but yet they're 500 and with the possibility of getting better.
That's right. And I'm somebody who's spent their entire career in the West Division. It's to use Marshall's word, it is a conundrum right now in Toronto. I did think that their second half was the best half that they played all season. And I know that Coach Dinwiddie, just to use that old cliche, has been really trying to get those players in that 1-0 this week mentality. And they seem to be eventually buying into that. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here down the stretch.
I sit in the stands for Argo games. So you get a bit of a different perspective.
Are you the guy with the vuvuzela that I keep hearing when I'm calling games?
That is not me. It might be my wife, but it's not me. I sit in the McLeod, Bethel, Thompson, we hate you section, and in the Coach Dinwiddie, known around my seats as Coach Dimwit section. And so it's funny to watch like the game the other night and see the Argos just trample the poor Ticats, and you're in the first half. Everybody in the section is calling for Chad Kelly. Yep. Like I don't know what it would take to put him in for just one series, but when McLeod Bethel Thompson has one of those halves where he's just lost, I wouldn't mind like setting him in for a series and see what he's got and go from there. The Argo coaching staff clearly doesn't take that approach and believes in Bethel Thompson far more than the people in section 214 do.
Well, this is interesting. I'll just throw in, Steve, that like I did the last two Argonauts games, and in both of them, Ryan Dinwiddie has told me we want to get Chad a series. Like we want to find a way to get him mixed in just because we need to be able to see whether or not he can take on more than the short yardage package and actually adapt to the entire offense and get into the flow of the game. And then you get the first half and everybody in the entire stadium, not just section 214, is thinking, well, he's got to get it. He's got to get a series. He's got to get something just to see. But if you remember back in week 3, when McLeod Bethel Thompson got pulled from the game late when they were getting blown out on the road in BC, he was furious. Like, and I think there's a really delicate balance there of, if Macbeth gets pulled at any point, Dinwiddie knows this might go nuclear, and I don't want it to go nuclear because I might eat both of these guys down the stretch. So it's a weird balancing act that they're trying to do where they're like, we really want to work in Chad because we think the potential's there, but we really don't want to feel like we've screwed over Macbeth and ruined our entire season if Chad doesn't work out.
Well, but it's funny because sorry, but it's strange because the Argos finished first last year.
Right.
They're in first right now. I didn't like their team last year. And for the most part, I don't like their team this year. So I think that speaks for the quality of the other 3 teams in the East. And I'm shocked by how bad the Ticats are.
The crazy thing to me is that McLeod Bethel Thompson gets a lot of ink and gets a lot of talk on podcasts and TSN. I mean, I'm trying to be as respectful as possible here, there, Alanna, and all you guys here. Like, is he that good?
Well, that's always the fun question, right? Is like, is Macbeth good? And I know Matt Dunnigan has the opinion that there's a lot of yabs. There's yards after beatdown that he's been with, but then he goes out and sometimes he operates with accuracy and intention and makes throws over the middle of the field and steps into things and uses his legs a little bit. And you're like, okay, yeah, but it's the inconsistency. It's like the thing that, and regardless of how he finishes his career, I think the thing that I will forever remember his CFL career for is when he misses a throw. And I don't know, like whether it's Franklin Rubenstein or if it's Don Landis or our directors in the truck, we know if McLeod misses a throw on 2nd and 10, immediately go to the ISO shot of him because he will give you television gold of him leaning back and doing something weird because he's frustrated and he just has this emotion that like flows out of his body in strange ways. So I don't know if he's good. I just know that he's interesting.
Okay, I asked a coach or a former coach about McLeod, and I think he described him relatively accurately. He's good enough to win you a game and good enough to lose you a game. Mm-hmm. And over the course of a season, you will be 500. And guess where the Argos are? They're 5-5. And I think were they last year 9-9? I can't remember now.
Yep, won the division.
So, that coach's description was pretty darn accurate. Good enough to win you occasionally games, good enough to lose you games on occasion as well.
Marshall, I'm going to start with you on this one because you've seen the entire rise, and fall.
Right.
The question is simple. What has happened to Dane Evans? And if he's healthy, should Matthew Schultz be the starter of the Hamilton Tiger Cats? Dane Evans took over. I mean, he was the selected choice over Jeremiah Masoli with 2 quarterbacks facing free agency. And you know this town as well as anyone. Everyone was in love with Dane, and now everyone's wishing they had Jeremiah Masoli. So what are we seeing with this cat?
Yeah, I don't know, Bubba. Is there a term for buyer's remorse where you don't buy? Like the thing that you let go and then you have that? I don't know. Steve's the writer here. He can fill us in on the verbiage on all that. But I would say, first and foremost, like it was, after the 3rd interception of Jamal Peters this past week, we went to commercial, and I already knew what the concept was, right? It's spacing. Like you play Madden, there's a concept called spacing where everybody basically runs into a soft spot and turns around at 5 yards. When I was at McMaster, we called it Henry, H for all hooks. Like it's simple stuff. And the ball has to come out quick. It has to be catch the snap, turn, know it. You pre-snap exactly where you're going with the football. On that throw, Dane snapped, looked to the left, came to the middle, kind of got nervous, looked to the right, threw it as hard as he could. And it's like throwing the football as hard as you can as a quarterback never makes up for the fact that you've made a poor decision or that you're off rhythm. So like I study this stuff. I track every single throw of every single quarterback throughout the league. And when we went to that commercial break after, I'm making this big touchdown call, Argos, we watched the replay and I turned to Dwayne Ford and he just goes, "What do you see?" And I was like, he's just not seeing it. Like he's not seeing the game the way that he needs to. Like his pre-snap and Dane is a super sound, fundamental, process-oriented guy. I know him personally and the way that he prepares. That's why it's so frustrating to me that he's just not seeing it. And he's making the mistakes, and he admitted it afterwards. Like he's like, "Yeah, I'm screwing us over, and I need to stop doing that because we got a decent team here, and I think that we can find ways to win games. But it's just I am not helping us. I am actively hurting us when I go and make these decisions." So, as a young dad myself, it kind of hurts my heart because I see Dane going through young fatherhood, going through the struggles of this. I see Cody Fajardo, him and his wife Laura, expecting right now. Like Cody's gone through some struggles this year. I'm like, there's a lot of balancing there on the human side of things. But when you're just looking at the business of football, it has to be Matthew Schultz moving forward as of right now. This is not a permanent thing. And this is why I was so interested what happened in BC with Nathan Rourke and Michael O'Connor, and of course now Antonio Pipkin, is that when people say like, "Oh, I can't believe that they had Michael O'Connor in that backup spot because you never know when your backup's going to play." And I said, "Oh, I do know when your backup's going to play. Your backup always ends up having to play. Like the number 2 on a CFL roster is always going to get in the game for at least a couple of games here or there. It's a long, long season and you get worn down, whether it's mentally or physically." So I was expecting to see Matthew Schultz at some point this year. I thought we just had the Matthew Schultz 2-game run and then Dane was going to come back and be improved and feel healthy. And it didn't happen. And that was really frustrating to me just watching it, not again from a supporter fan perspective, but because I love watching these quarterbacks excel at a high level. And I love watching them figure it out and battle through adversity. And, I'm framing it on television. I'm saying tremendous challenge here. Dane is back in the place where he got hurt back in week 9. He's tweaking his chest. It looks like he's a little bit dinged. His backup is out of the game with a wrist injury or hand right now. And he's got to drive down the field and try and get them the win. And it's that drive that he throws the 3rd interception of Jamal Peters. And that's, I think, why it became so painful.
Alanna, what are you seeing? I mean, you have no skin in the game here. I mean, he's not playing well.
Yeah. I mean, Steve, you were at the game. Marsh, you were obviously at the game on Friday. I was there as well. To me, Dane looks like he's just lacking confidence, and he comes out onto the field for a series and his body language is just already dejected. And I think opponents are actually almost picking up on that. Jamal Peters certainly was on Friday night. And it seems like he's always forcing it, just to reinforce what Marsh was saying. It doesn't look like he's naturally finding those, that he's just forcing it at this point.
Something happens to athletes at different times and different people, depending on who they are. And inexplicably, they lose their way. And you don't always know why, you don't always know when or how, but we've seen it. And when you're the quarterback and you lose your way, everybody in the world knows. If you're the left guard, it may not be as obvious. And so I think Dane Evans has gone from a guy who seemed to know what he was and seemed to know how he needed to play on a very well-coached football team. And he looks like, honestly, he looks lost. He looks completely lost. And I don't mean just lost, lost in confidence, lost in his ability ability to lead, lost in I'm going to bring this team back and win the game. I can't remember which game it was earlier in the season where the Ticats got the ball back late and he had a chance to take them down the field to win a game. And I think he turned it over almost immediately. He just doesn't have whatever it needs. Quarterbacks are, Marshall, quarterbacks have to be different. Quarterbacks have to be the guy. Quarterbacks have to be the guy everyone believes in. And how can you believe in Dane Evans right now? I mean, he looks like he's going to cry sometimes on the field. I mean, that one game where he turned the ball over, the other quarterback had to come over from the other team. And
the Edmonton game.
It's okay, bud, kind of thing. How many times have we ever seen that we've all been watching sports our whole lives. I don't think I've seen that very often.
Which was Nick Arbuckle, who's now in the East Division. So
I'm going to disagree with you on one thing, Marsh.
Yep.
I don't think Stilts is good enough. I don't think he's a starting quarterback. I don't think he's a guy you can win with. So to me, changing to him is saying, "Oh, we're losing this entire season." If you either have to find a way to rebuild Evans in whatever it is, whether that means simply down the offense or changing how you go about things or whatever, he has to be the quarterback. And the problem that they have is they don't have another one. The second guy can run a little bit. Third guy, to me, is a complete waste of time. And so today's cut down day, by the way, in the NFL. And if I'm Tiger Cat management, I'm scouring the list for somebody that I can bring in that gives me a chance to win football games. Maybe not right now because you're in that mode, but maybe later in the season if you're in a playoff situation. I just don't think right now. I think the Tiger Cats quarterbacking is atrocious.
It's got to be better. I mean, he's getting paid top dollar, is he not?
And the hard thing to me is I've never seen an Orlando Steinauer football. I have great regard for Orlando Steinauer. I've never seen an Orlando Steinauer football team as desperately lost as this one is. I don't know what's gone on there. Same staff, same people, same head coach. I don't know what's happened.
Yeah, I think the way that I look at O on the sideline right now is that he's in disbelief, right? I think we can all see that when you go to kind of the close-up shots and, you see the emotion that kind of pours through him, which is something I've always respected about O, is that he doesn't really hide that stuff. Like, he just kind of allows it to be present for everybody. But, I mean, big picture, yeah, quarterbacking for the Ticats, I think Schultz is it's so funny with him because he doesn't look like a runner, yet he's a runner. He doesn't act like this command the room, rah, lead the everybody in there kind of guy. But he did a pretty good job in Montreal, and the Alouettes just happened to have the football last. Otherwise, Hamilton would have come out there with a win and probably would have been a little bit different. I was actually looking at the splits for the month of August, so basically weeks 9, 10, 11, and 12 this morning, and Schultz is like the third most efficient passer, but he doesn't feel that way. To Steve's point, like, I don't disagree that he does not come off as that guy, and he doesn't seem like, obviously, he's one of the most reliable backups in the league. The one thing I do find really interesting about the dynamic with Dane and Schultz, that I should say, is that, like, when Jeremiah was in the room with Dane, we all know that it was very much, we're going to work side by side, whoever the team needs, like right down to the Grey Cup, right? Like, Dane went in that whole week as the starter, but knew his neck was dinged, gets hit in the first quarter. It's like, you're gone. And then it's going to be Jeremiah the rest of the way. And he almost leads the charge back and finishes. I wonder if that pass is completed to Ackland, whether or not Jeremiah is still a Tiger Cat, but that's a different discussion. And then in the offseason, it's like, okay, we're going with Dane. And he gets the full vote of confidence, and he's on the billboards everywhere around town and all that. And then they bring in Schultz, who he's worked out with down in Texas. And I thought that Dane was going to very much control, like, I am the starter. I'm going to own this. This is my team. And right from the jump, even from some training camp practices that I was at, it was like split reps, and Schultz is getting the run package here and there. And Dane, ever the diplomat, was very much like, you know what, this is the way that it is. And Tommy's got a vision, and anything that helps us win, I really don't care. Dane is an incredible teammate, but I think he needs a little bit more of that dog in him, like, for his career to survive. Like, mentally, at some point, when Steve talks about quarterbacks that got to be different, at some point, you got to have that McLeod Bethel Thompson screaming at your coaches on the sideline in BC of, I'm not coming off the damn field because I'm the face of the franchise. And I don't think Dane really has that in him because, to his detriment, he's a great dude. And I think sometimes as a quarterback, you can't always be a great dude, which seems counterintuitive when you're trying to lead an entire room. But people don't always have to like you to lead and be inspired by you.
This is juicy to me, guys, sticking with quarterbacks. Now, following the performance of Jake Maier in that Calgary's close loss to Winnipeg, which seems to be the trend all season long. Alanna, I got to ask you this question. Does Bo Levi Mitchell become trade bait? Is he even back for 2023? And kind of a sub note to that, like these Calgary Winnipeg games, I mean, can we bottle those up and make that the Grey Cup, for crying out loud?
I got a great stat for you here before Alanna gives this answer that I saw going into the Toronto Hamilton game on, what was it, Friday night that we did that? Somebody tweeted out that the Calgary Winnipeg game on Thursday night this past week had 19 total possessions in that game. Toronto Calgary, the previous Saturday evening that I had done at BMO, each team had 18 possessions. So that goes to show, like, when you have 2 and outs and back and forth and your offense is ineffective and all the rest, you're just going punt, 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 and you're hoping that at some point somebody makes a big play and they win the game. The quality of Calgary Winnipeg is they're not just giving the football back because they just refuse to come off of the field because they're that good. So anyways, I wanted to throw that to you, Alanna, because I love that statistic to show just how good those games have been.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's been really exciting to watch Winnipeg and Calgary go at it all season. But, guys, I spent 10 years with the Stampeders, and I can tell you that trading their franchise quarterback is not something that they're going to be taking lightly. But at the same time, there is a lot of excitement around Jake Maier in Calgary, not just with the front office, but with the fan base. That being said, knowing Huff as well as I do, I know he's not going to just give him up for nothing. There's going to have to be some assets. Bo is a free agent next year, so I do believe that he is trade bait at this point.
You're saying it's over.
Go ahead, Steve.
I think for the last 2 to 2.5 seasons, we've seen a decline in Bo Levi Mitchell from that absolute superstar, sure thing Hall of Fame guy to a guy who's, whether his skills are diminishing or physically he's beaten up or what it is, I don't know. But he looks to be the I'm close to retirement guy. And I wouldn't be the least bit surprised to see Bo Levi Mitchell sitting beside Milt Stegall and Davis Sanchez and Rod Smith, or not Rod anymore, Kate, in the not too distant future. I think his career is on the down spiraling. And I don't think anyone in the CFL could possibly believe him to be the answer to their problems when he seems to have his own problems.
Well, the Argos offered him a lot of money. They thought he was the guy.
Yeah, that was, how long was that? 2 seasons ago?
I think 2 seasons ago.
2018, I think it might
have
been.
2018, okay.
Yeah, but we're now in 2022.
All right.
And I don't know if you guys, Alanna would know this better than the rest of us, but I'm watching a guy in decline. And I love Bo.
I love Bo too. I think, and I don't mean this as a slight against him, I think Bo is used to being the best player on the team, and he's not the best player on the Calgary team anymore. Kadeem Carey is. And I think, you guys, we've got 3 former quarterbacks in the coach's office. So I think they know better about who the next quarterback, if it is Bo Levi Mitchell for the Calgary Stampeders, or if they're going to go with Jake Maier. Sounds like he is going to get the start for Labor Day, which will be interesting. But it's interesting to see his decline, like you say, Steve.
And a coach in the GMC. I'm sorry, a quarterback in the GMC too. Yeah. So a lot of quarterbacks there.
My takeaway from this is that 2 things. One, the most confusing part of Bo's statistical output this season specifically, not looking big picture on the last couple of years, is if you were to tell me at the start of the year, hey, you have to pick 2 receivers who are going to lead the CFL in combined yardage, I would have said Begelton and Jordan. Like, I would have taken that over Kyron Moore coming off injury, Duke Williams, Ellingson, and insert name here because we had no idea that Dalton Schoen was going to be that dude. Lucky Whitehead, Brian Burnham, I might have said, maybe, but I don't know what Rourke's going to be at the start of the year. Start of the year, I would have said Bo's going to come back healthy. Beggleton with a full season at a training camp, and Kamar Jordan is his guy. And the most confusing thing to me has been the usage, I think, of Reggie Beggleton at times where he's getting a lot of swing passes and quick screens. And like, that's a downfield guy. Like, he can win you possessions down the field. And Kamar Jordan and Bo just can't get on the same page. Like, whether it's corner routes, in breaking routes, timing routes, hot routes against blitzes, like it's been very, very confusing right from week one, by the way. Like, watching that game against Montreal, I was like, oh, it's kind of weird, but maybe they'll figure it out over time. It's week 12. It hasn't changed. So that's the most confusing thing. And the second thing to me, to Steve's point, is I don't know if Bo would ever consider not being a Stampeder. Like, if he is trade bait, and I don't know if he is, they say, hey, we want to send you to Ottawa because they're not happy with Caleb Evans and that they've got draft capital and we can get back some Canadian pieces. And like, is Bo going to be like, all right, East Division, love it, let's go to the nation's capital? He might, but I don't know if he's the type of person, especially after the career that Alanna knows so well that he's had in Calgary. Like, this is the weird thing to me. We just celebrated Bo becoming the all-time leading passer in Calgary Stampeders history. And then like the next week, it was like, congrats, bench. Sorry. Yeah, you're done in this.
I got to jump in here for 1 second on that, because on Saturday night, McLeod Bethel Thompson became the fourth leading passer in Argos history, behind Ricky Ray, Conrad Holloway, and Damon Allen. Hall of Famer, and McLeod. Yeah. One of the, as I wrote in the Sunday column, one of these things is not like the other.
Yeah, he definitely is in that spot that even when we were putting the graphic up on TSN, I think we were kind of confused. We're like, oh, how did he crawl up into that spot? But the concept of having him get into that rhythm in that mode where he felt like, okay, I'm knocking down the all-time records and we're having some fun here. And then it was like, yeah, that's not good enough over the last 2 games. And now you're throwing bad interceptions because you're misreading the defense and you go to the bench. And it would be amazing if Bo's career, like if he didn't take another snap the week after becoming the all-time Stamps passing leader, and people will look back in 20 years and be like, wow, he barely edged out Henry Burris. And it's like, well, there's kind of a backstory to that. Like he just crossed the finish line, and then he's still trying to track him down for all-time touchdown passes in franchise history.
But the one loss record is the greatest thing on the resume.
Yeah,
that one loss record you look at, and that's an all-time great one loss record. Mm-hmm. And you can't take that away from him no matter what.
Hey, let's go move on here to BC Lions here. No Rourke, no win for the Lions. That was sort of the big topic going into the week. I thought O'Connor played fairly well. Then he gets banged up. Pipkin try and does whatever he can. Should this team, the Lions, be concerned about their second place standing in the West? Marshall.
Yeah, the slander from Glenn Suter, by the way, saying this is the best football Antonio Pipkin's ever played. Do you not remember 2019 in Montreal? How dare. We all remember when Simone Lawrence was stealing his towel in a throwaway end of season game, and he was playing tremendous. But
there was great moments for Antonio Pipkin, other than at the 1 yard line.
It's funny because again, as somebody who tracks every snap of every game, I end up coming away with these one-off memories where I'm like, wow, he had a great half in 2019, and people that don't do that are just like, who is that? I'm like, yeah, I know it's weird. I shouldn't know that he had a good half in 2019, but that is the nature of the beast, I guess. Yeah, for BC, I was really interested this week when the TSN panel did their how do you think the West will finish kind of segment. And it's so tough because Nathan was playing at such a level that he was raising everybody around him, and they're already really talented. And I think that's incredible about the way that he was piecing it all together with them and giving them confidence, because I think they had belief in him coming out of a year where he took all the practice reps when Michael Riley couldn't throw in practice. But then you came into the game, and seeing it in a game versus seeing it in practice is a totally different thing. And he kept just crossing every single hurdle that they put out. It was like week 1, that's a huge challenge at home. Okay, he did it. Bye week, that kind of sucks. You stop your momentum. Week 3 against Toronto, you did it again. Whoa, maybe this is the norm. And he just kept week 4 on the road. He throws a couple interceptions, he battles it back and has a high completion percentage, throws for a bunch of yards again. And it was just like every week it got better and better and better and better. And I think in BC, there was this sense developing of it doesn't matter what the game situation is. Nathan can win us the game, which we were just talking about Bo. When Bo was at his best, that was Bo. doesn't matter what the situation is, Bo can go and get you a win. And Calgary against BC, we literally saw Nathan Rourke take the crown and be like, oh no, I'm that guy now that no matter the game situation on the road at McMahon against Bo, I'll be the one that goes and finds the throws to get us the victory. So without him, I think they're a third team in the playoff at best, honestly, at this point, behind Winnipeg and likely Calgary. The question is whether or not Saskatchewan can cover enough ground to get them. The win in BC this past weekend will certainly help that.
Before Rourke goes down, he's not just heading for the most outstanding player in the CFL. He's right at the top of the Lou Marsh Athlete of the Year talk. And I think that's the kind of year, the kind of special season he was having. So he goes down, and we hope to see Michael O'Connor, and within minutes he goes down. And I'm thinking, go across pro football, all of the CFL, all of the NFL. Name a team that can put their third string quarterback out there and look like they're in sync. Mm-hmm. They can't. Most of those guys are there for a reason, unless they're the Henry Burris behind, Jeff Garcia and whoever it was in Calgary at the time. The way Matt Dunnigan was in Edmonton behind Damon Allen. And sometimes that third guy is the next one, but 99% of the time he's not. And so you can't expect Pipkin to be anything other than what Pipkin is. And against Calgary and against Winnipeg, and I think against, Saskatchewan as well, as long as Fajardo is semi-competent, BC's in a tough spot. And it's unfortunate because, they were in a wonderful spot. And this is what happens when a great quarterback, and right now there's two of them in the CFL, I think, 1.5. And so, one of the 1.5 or 2 is gone. And
Alanna, you're shaking your head on this.
No, I'm just nodding because especially BC's got a really tough schedule coming up too. They've got Montreal next, which is a travel nightmare coming from Vancouver. And then they've got back-to-back Calgary. And then they finish the year with almost back-to-back Winnipeg. So I think second in the West is kind of a pipe dream at this point for BC Lions.
A possible get down to do they get as far down as possibly the crossover? Or have we lost? I mean, I thought their defense was pretty good with BC, Marshall.
Yeah. I have great respect for their defense, and their special teams isn't bad either. Their punting average, I think, is kind of flown under the radar, and their coverage teams are really good so far this year from the game that I did week 4 of them, I think. And I do have them in Toronto coming up in a couple weeks as well. So get a closer look at them again. But what the quarterbacking situation is going to be by the time they get to Toronto in a couple weeks, I have no clue. I don't know who's going to be in there or what they're going to be looking like or what the offense is going to look like. So it's all a bit of a mystery on offense. But yeah, their defense is – their back end always flies around, makes plays. Ryan Phillips has them playing at a very high level. They have good schemes. They've got stud linebackers. They're getting Bo Lecumbo back in the last couple of weeks, so he's going to get up to speed, I think, and hopefully stay healthy. They have good pieces. They still have a very good team, and the reason for that, even after Steven Richardson, who they signed in free agency from Winnipeg, went down, and Woody Barron, and is that they had a quarterback who wasn't making very much money and was playing out of his mind. And they spent all that money in free agency on other positions around the roster. So now that he is hurt, I don't know where that goes, how the roster construction works, what free agency looks like for the Lions. But certainly this year, I think the crossover is completely in play if the East Division, specifically as it stands right now, Hamilton and Ottawa don't figure it out. You're going to have an East Division that's going to be Montreal, Toronto, and the BC Lions.
Wow.
And if I'm a team in the West, I want to be in the crossover. Mm-hmm. You want to go to Regina to play, or do you want to go to Calgary to play, or do you want to fly and play Ottawa? I'll take Ottawa. Thank you very much.
Steve, can I stick with you on that? You hit on something there that kind of stirs me up a little bit there. That your comment about maybe there being 1.5 good quarterbacks in the league. Is this a serious problem? Are you being sarcastic, or do you really believe that?
No. See, I think Rourke was having an all-time great season. I mean, you look at that half of a season and then even multiplied by 2 his half, those are all-time great numbers. Those are incredible numbers, and those are numbers we've never seen before. So yeah, Rourke was doing things, whether it's magic or whether it's one season, we don't know. Zach Collaros would be the other guy for me. And he's a funny study because there's nothing about him that looks great. Again, he's like, except he wins. He wins all the time. He handles the ball and he doesn't make mistakes with it. And he keeps the game relatively in control and he has a way to win it late. Is he a great quarterback? Is he a guy that you look at and say down the road, this guy is, with, whoever you're going to rate as your, whether it's Russ Jackson or Ron Lancaster or Flutie or Cavillo, or is he one of those guys? I don't think so. But he's an unbelievable winner with a team that knows how to win, and he fits that whole thing perfectly. Marshall, I'd be interested to hear his view because I don't think he's a great quarterback, but boy, does he know how to win.
Marshall, we saw Zach Collaros together. Yep. Go what 0 for 13? We did.
We did the Calvillo to him. We ran him out of town because that's what we do in Hamilton. But
sorry, Alanna.
Oh no, sorry. Somebody was just at my office door.
Sorry, Marshall. Go ahead.
Yeah. So here's my whole takeaway on Steve's comment there. Derek Taylor from CJOB out there in Winnipeg had a great stat this past week where he said, if you subtract Collaros and Rourke, the touchdown to interception numbers for the rest of the Canadian Football League this year are 50 touchdowns, 53 interceptions. Like that was going into week 12, in which obviously Dane had his struggles with the 3 interceptions. And so even if other quarterbacks had a clean sheet, like it's basically going to keep going that way where the league wide, you're going to have a 1-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. That's not good. That's not winning football if you have a 1-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio typically. So I look around at the rest of the league and I think it is. Collaros is that guy that now has the mantle. Bo, when he's playing at a high level, is there. He's not playing at a high level. Mike O'Reilly's no longer in the league. You got the Ticats trying to figure it out. Macbeth is inconsistent. Trevor Harris is going to play Trevor Harris ball where he just tries to keep it away from you a whole bunch and then throw the deep ball to Geno Lewis a couple times a game. So it's not a high level, but specifically on Collaros, this was something that stuck out in my mind from talking to Dave Dickinson a couple of weeks ago, where he said for you to beat the best teams in any level of football, but really in the Canadian Football League because of the 3-down setup, he believes your quarterback has to make 3 or 4 special plays per game. Has to make 3 or 4 special plays per game. If he doesn't do that, you're just not going to beat the best teams. You might be able to beat some of the worst teams and some of the middle pack teams, but when you're playing the best teams, he's got to make 3 or 4 special plays, which was interesting because Dave told us that the game before he ended up benching Bo and going with Jake, and maybe he wanted more of those special plays out of Bo and wasn't getting them. Zach Collaros on an every down basis, on an every game basis, is not spectacular. Where he is special is 2nd and 10 in the 4th quarter. And it's weird because when we talk about winning, and really this is something that I've kind of been toying with in my mind, is that in the big picture of a Canadian Football League game, each team is going to get about 60 offensive snaps per game. We are a 70-30 run, a pass run split. So you're basically going to end up with, somewhere between 33 to 38 pass attempts per game. Of those, the majority are going to come on 2nd down because you're going to be more pass heavy on 2nd down. You're basically going to get 5 throws in the 4th quarter when you really section it off, where a quarterback actually gets to decide the game and actually gets to decide wins and losses. And obviously you still have to be really efficient on 1st down and in the 1st quarter, 2nd, 3rd. But when you get to the 4th quarter and it's a close game and you have a chance to make those 5 throws, Collaros is a freak. And that's why he's a winner, because he finds ways to affect the game on difficult down and distances and also off schedule. The times where he breaks the pocket and rolls away to his right, even the game they lost against Montreal, he at one play, he threw a touchdown to Dalton Schoen. I looked at it from the end zone cut. He took a quick drop in the backfield, steps up because there's pressure off the edges. The pocket starts to collapse. He stiff arms a defensive lineman, rolls out to his right. Adarius Pickett, the Sam linebacker, is spying him, starts chasing him down because Zach's not running away from him. Hits him as Zach is rolling to his right, throws it sidearm 30 yards down the field, drops in a corner route to Dalton Schoen, who was on scramble rules, and then Dalton Schoen catches it right in front of a defender who hits him. I'm like, that must be what it's like to score in real life when it's on all Madden difficulty mode. That's dumb to be able to do that type of stuff, but he does that and he makes it look normal, which is why I really appreciate the art of the way that Collaros plays, but the science of it, the overall big picture, to Steve's point, he's not this incredible every down guy.
The general managers across the board in the CFL have not done enough good work to bring quarterbacks in. And I know it's more challenging than ever before because NFL teams are now keeping 4 and 5 quarterbacks with practice rosters. And so guys who would be available once upon a time are not so available. But there was a time Ricky Ray was playing quarterback for the Argos, and Zach Caleros was his backup. And then Cody Fajardo was his backup. And then Trevor Harris was his backup. Jim Barker brought all those guys in. Maybe the CFL needs about 9 Jim Barkers to go out and find quarterbacks that you can turn into something, because I look at Edmonton. I look at, the guys who are playing in other places in Ottawa and say, those guys aren't going to be good enough. They're not good enough now. They're not going to be good enough later.
Well, Atlanta was in a place, Calgary, where it seemed like going way back to Flutie and Dickinson. I mean, it just kept rolling and rolling, and amazing to see that chain of quarterbacks happen in Calgary there in Atlanta.
Yeah, then that's, I think, like we mentioned about the 3 quarterbacks that are in the coach's office with Mark Mueller, Dave Dickinson, and John Huffnagel. And for a while, Ryan Dinwiddie was there as well. So they all speak the same language. They all recognize each other's game, I think. And I think Huff has a really good handle on recognizing talent when he sees it. And that's why, the quarterback carousel in Calgary has been so good for so long.
Hey, folks, the Labor Day Classic 50-50 jackpot is a guaranteed $50,000 at Tim Hortons Field coming up on Monday. Be sure to get your tickets early for a chance at the $50K and the early bird draw for $1,000 big bucks this Friday at 8 p.m. Visit Ticats5050.com, brought to you by the Hamilton Bulldogs Foundation, license number RAF 1235466. Folks, I'll end on this one here. Simple question. Alanna, start with you. The best Labor Day rivalry is?
I've only seen Calgary Edmonton, but I'm excited for my first Battle of Ontario. So I'm going to say Calgary Edmonton because I just don't know any different.
Why? What is it? Because it's a provincial thing?
Yeah, it's a provincial rivalry. It's great to, beat your provincial rival. And there's just like that animosity between Calgary and Edmonton. That's always, it goes, past CFL football. It goes to the NHL level. It goes, on a municipal level. There's a bitter hatred between, Cowtown and Edmonton. And, there's nothing like Labor Day with the Jets fly over and you're on the sideline. And it's such a great atmosphere, and I'm really excited to see how it compares and stacks up in Hamilton this weekend.
Marsh?
I love the way that the Banjo Bowl looks. I've never been a part of it. I've never been around it. So I can't comment on how great it actually is in person, although I'm sure it's fantastic. I will say this. Sometimes I like to go to games, not Section 214 at BMO with Steve, but I do like to go to games once in a while in Hamilton when I'm not working, and typically just kind of like sit in the upper deck and kind of like scout a team or get to see them live so I can understand kind of what they're running offensively a little bit better and stuff like that. That actually helps me call the action when I'm doing play-by-play. And I went to Montreal, Hamilton on the Thursday night. I think it was like week 7 or 8, something like that. And Hamilton wins a game that was way closer than it needed to be. And as soon as people are walking through the exits, they're screaming, Argos suck. I'm like, the Argos aren't even around. I'm like, they don't even have the Argos next week. I'm like, it's just like the hatred of that to me has always flowed strong. And I think to the point about Atlanta and Calgary with the jet flyover and all the rest, there's something special about the buildup, I think, on Labor Day in Hamilton. Like you kind of feel it around the stadium, whether it's the earlier kickoff or the tailgating or the kids going back to school or whatever it might be. It really does have kind of like this signpost effect mentally for football fans where it totally feels different from summer football. So Hamilton definitely has that impact. And I love seeing people from Toronto that love their team come down and support the Argos as well, because let's be real about this. There's no such thing as a rivalry if both teams don't win and if both teams don't like each other. And in this rivalry, both teams tend to win and both teams tend to not like each other.
I spent 8 years in Calgary, and boy, this was in the heyday of the Oilers and the heyday of the Flames. And boy, you came to know how much those cities, as Alanna points out, hate each other. But what's happened with football, in my history anyhow, when the Eskimos or the Elks well, the Elks haven't been, but when the Eskimos were great, the Stampeders weren't. And when the Stampeders were great, for the most part, the Eskimos weren't. And so over time, the cities have an amazing rivalry. Like the two cities, they could fight over anything. I mean, realistically, politically, it doesn't matter what is, culturally, who has the better music festival, who serves better steak. I mean, it could come down to anything. But the Argo Ticat Labor Day thing for me, I grew up with it and now have lived here for 35 years. And to me, it's almost like a bowl game. It's independent of the rest of the season. It's Labor Day football. I mean, I taught my kids when they were little, Labor Day means something. And if you ask, my kids are 35 and 32 now. And if you ask them, what's coming up, they'll know the Ticats and the Argos are playing on Labor Day. They don't know anything else about the CFL. In fact, when they were kids, we invented something called the Labor Day dance. And the little kids were dancing around in the house because Labor Day football was coming up.
Let's see it.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where the teams are in the standings. It doesn't matter who's good or who's bad. That game takes a life of its own. And I know I never want to miss a Labor Day game. And I'm going to be there Monday in the press box. And I look forward to being there Monday.
Well, there's a long-standing feeling among Tiger Cat fans, and who have seen some very good football teams over the years, and had the Grey Cup stretches back to '99. And the saying is, we don't care if we're 3-15, 2-16, or 16-2. The one win better be on Labor Day at home against the Argonauts. And Steve, let me just extend this: because you spent a lot of time in Toronto. Does it have something to do with the fact that, when Toronto people leave the vicinity, and if they're going to Niagara Falls or Buffalo, all they see is they drive over the Skyway and they just see the steel mills, and they just have this particular thought of Hamilton. And then there's Hamiltonians that just think Toronto, the big city, we're the best. Like, is there something like that it goes beyond the sport itself?
Well, I remember as a kid making the drive with my dad down the QEW. And in those days, like, the Argos were doing 35,000, 40,000 a game. It's a lot different than now. And people would be honking their cars and waving at fellow Argo fans. And if there was a Ticat flag on the car, you would be giving them the thumbs down. And there was this whole thing. And I think, I don't think it's so much the steel mills and the difference in what the city is, because Hamilton's become almost a bedroom community over time for Toronto now. There's so many people that work, although everyone's working from home now, we're working in Toronto while living in Hamilton. I just think it's football, and it's the premise of it. There's a lot of people, especially new Canadians, they don't know anything of the Argos. They don't know anything of the Ticats. This doesn't even exist for them. But for people who grew up with it, and people who grew up with that, even on Friday night, one of the things that made the crowd kind of fun was the Hamilton fans. They were, deriding the Argos, and then the Argo fans got into it and went back. It was all clean fun and stadium fun, but it added a level of something to the game. And I saw a sign about Ticats suck, and it was like they lost the last two Grey Cups. How bad is that? I thought it was a pretty funny sign. But this is what it is. And here's one other thing: there are people, lots of them my age or in that range, who grew up when the Argos were way bigger than they are now. And they seem interested on Labor Day. They care about who plays and who wins on Labor Day. I find we can track now about columns. When you write a column, we can track how many people read it. And not just how many people read it, but for how long they take to read it. And so what we found in the past is that I can write 6 different Argo games, and it will hit a limited audience or a middle range audience. I write Labor Day, it's a big audience. And I suspect the same happens with television now as well.
Yeah, no doubt. I know, like, if you were to take the, probably 2 of the 3 previous games and combine them, that would probably equal the Labor Day television viewership, if I were to guess. Like, that's the way that it is, which, by the way, is the greatest moment. Bubba, you'll appreciate this now working with the Ticats Audio Network. Right before we did kickoff of Labor Day in like 2017 or 18, some tech guy came in and changed a wire. He was like, I just got to make sure this is all correct. I'm like, sure. And then I started calling the game, and I was working with Coach John Salavanus at that point on the color commentary. And I started asking him about, hey, Coach, happy Labor Day, and hope you're having a great weekend. He goes, well, yeah, Bob and the guys, we went out yesterday and we were golfing, having fun doing this. And then I started getting all of these texts and tweets from people that are like, hey, your audio is on television right now. And if you go back and watch the start of the kickoff, it's Rod Black and Dwayne Ford trying to be very professional on television and like set up the game, and Giovanni Aprile is back to return, and it'll be Labor Day here in Hamilton. And then it's just Coach Sal and I being like, hey, where'd you play golf yesterday? And it went out over the national television airwaves. I'll never forget that, because I was just like, yeah, that's not going to help my chances moving forward of actually doing it.
That may have been the big one.
They liked my style, I guess, because now I'm doing it. So
last one to you on this, Alanna. When the Labor Day Classic switches cities, and I guess we'll go to Edmonton, is that just as big the week after?
Oh, yeah. Like I said, the fans travel for both. So the Calgary fans come to Commonwealth Stadium. They're usually behind the Calgary bench, making as much noise when the defense is on the field. But yeah, to the point of Steve, again, it's not even just like who cooks a better steak, but it's also like who has the better mountain town. Is it Jasper or is it Banff? Like it's until you're really in both cities or in one city, you don't really get understand it until you see it for yourself. But since Marsh is telling us funny Labor Day stories, I've got one really quickly. We're on the sideline. It was at McMahon Stadium, and I'm standing next to Huff just outside the box, and the Jets go over and everybody's excited and everything, and Huff's looking at his call sheet, and all of a sudden you just hear him, or you see him go like this. He's flying like he was batting away a fly that went past his ear, and it was the Jets. So everybody knows that Huff has a little bit of a hearing issue, and he didn't hear the Jets at all. Just like this.
I've had that conversation with him.
I have too. I have in my early,
What?
in my early
You better
days.
make sure you're using your lips to talk, because he's reading them.
My early reporter days, he said, "Can you speak up, please? Can you speak up?" I was like, and I didn't know about the hearing thing. I was like, I don't want to yell. I don't want to be rude. Hey, folks, the Labor Day Classic is going to be well celebrated on the Ticats Audio Network as the Tiger Cats and Argonauts complete that home-and-home series at Tim Hortons Field. Coverage begins at 11 with Game Day hosted by Courtney Stephen along with Mike Daly. And at noon, it's the Tiger Cats pregame as presented by Journey Rewards with myself, Andy Fantuz. And at 1, it's RJ Broadhead and Luke Tasker, 17. With the call. Please join us. Hey, outstanding columns, guys, and excellent host today. Alanna, thanks for joining us. We can't wait to have you back. Where do we find you? Social media is a big deal, I hear.
Social media, at Alanna Nolan on Twitter and Instagram. And you can also find me at Woodbine. We're doing some really exciting stuff with horse racing and trying to reach a whole new audience, just like the CFL.
Marsh, you got something going there with Canadian football perspective. That's doing real well. I see Mike Daly on there as well, too. Where do we find you?
Yeah, I was able to steal Daly away from his newfound coaching duties over there at Laurier to have some conversations with him, which has been great. But I want to mention as well, you can find me on social media at Simmons Steve is the best place to find me, and I'll be tweeting there live all throughout Labor Day. So make sure you're following along. But no, Canadian football perspective has been a lot of fun. It was kind of a passion project that when our TSN station went under, I decided to try and develop and grow it out and do something a little different. But it's been a lot of fun. And then of course, CFL.ca doing all of the written work, and then doing sports center analysis pieces 2 a week as well to kind of break down in 90 seconds or less. Something that's caught my eye from around the week. So this week I'm actually doing one on the Saskatchewan Roughriders offensive line as they get ready for Jackson and Jackson Jeff Code and Willie Jefferson out there in that matchup on Sunday. And I'm also doing one on what we've learned through the first 3 games of Toronto Hamilton this year, kind of taking a side-by-side of differences and similarities of those 3 games. So you can check those out on tsn.ca.
Steve, where can we find you?
Okay, first off, you've got Courtney Stephen coming on.
Yes.
When my son went to play college football, he had the misfortune of playing the same position at the same school as Courtney Stephen.
Wow.
Which meant he never got on the field. He made a friend, but he never actually got on the field. And that's the respect that I have for Courtney, even though he prevented my kid from playing college football. That and talent might have been it.
Heck of a player.
You can find me, as Marshall already gave out, you can find me on Twitter at Simmons Steve. You can find me in the Toronto Sun or any post-media newspaper throughout the week, and certainly every Sunday. You can subscribe to my Sunday column and get it by email on Saturday if you want to do that, which saves you $1 or $2. And I have a book coming out in November that I hope people will be happy about. It's called A Lucky Life. It is 40 years of already written columns, 85 of them from the past 40 years, and special events and special people and special stories and things I'm real proud of. And I really look forward to that coming out in November. You could actually pre-order now on Amazon and on Indigo and Chapters and those kind of places where you order books.
I am already typing on my device because I know that's going to be a good quality read. That's for sure there, Steve. Thank you again for joining us. Guys, this has been the CFL This Week. Outstanding show. Hey, Labor Day. It is the time where CFL fans come out of the woodwork. Enjoy both leagues because, the National Football League is going as well, too. Fun part of the CFL season about to kick in right now, and we're just getting going, as always, here on the CFL This Week. Hope you enjoyed us. We're always here every Monday for you. Like, subscribe. We're on all podcast platforms. Why don't you join us as well, too? Hey, again, thanks for joining us. Outstanding guest. This has been the CFL This Week on the Ticats Audio Network.
The CFL This Week with Bubba O'Neil. Subscribe, like, and get the deepest takes on Canada's game every Monday.